Hey, welcome back to Based MMA. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis, the main event of UFC 297, guys. In this video, I'm mainly going to be talking about Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis. At the end of the video, I will be showing the rest of my picks for the rest of the card, but mostly in this video, I just want to discuss Sean Strickland versus Dricus du Plessis because this is a tough call, man. This is a really tough fight. The problem with this fight, the problem with the narrative going into this fight is that there's a lot of Sean Strickland fans, a lot of hardcore Sean Strickland fans, and there's a lot of hardcore Dricus du Plessis fans. And what I've seen with a lot of these breakdowns is that I feel like a lot of people are very biased going into this fight because either you're a big Sean Strickland supporter or you're a big Dricus du Plessis supporter. You know, you're probably mad because you think Sean Strickland's a hypocrite because of the comments. In this video, I'm not going to be picking a side because of that. I'm going to be objectively picking who I think is going to win this fight. I'm not going to take into consideration the fan bases because no matter who I end up picking, if I pick Sean Strickland and Dricus ends up winning, you know, I'm going to be shit on for that. If I pick DDP and Sean Strickland ends up winning, I'm going to get shit on for that. So I made sure, the reason why it took long to post this video, because typically I post my prediction for the main event of a pay-per-view a week before the pay-per-view. But for this fight, I actually took a little bit longer to break it down because it's such a tough call, man. Like honestly, that's the honest truth. It's such a tough call to call this fight because this is a story of the underdogs. I mean, both these guys were massive underdogs going into their last fight. I mean, who thought Sean Strickland was going to beat Israel Adesanya? Who thought that Dricus du Plessis was going to beat Robert Whittaker? The guy that, you know, Robert Whittaker was probably the most hyped up. I mean, not hyped up, but he was looked as the uncrowned champion of the middleweight division. And then we saw Dricus du Plessis. He was coming off that win against Derek Brunson. Prior to that, he was coming off that win against Darren Till. And, you know, I didn't think too highly of Dricus du Plessis, to be honest. So let's just start off with Dricus du Plessis. I mean, Dricus du Plessis is on an amazing win streak right now. He's coming off an amazing win over Robert Whittaker. And I feel like most MMA fans, including myself, after that Robert Whittaker fan, we did change our perspective in the way we saw Dricus du Plessis and his fight style. Because prior to that, I can't lie, man, Dricus du Plessis has an ugly fighting style. His fighting style is so ugly. And even when I go back and rewatch his fights, I'm just like, man, am I really going to pick this guy to be Sean Strickland? But he makes it work. He makes it work. And he's so unorthodox. He switches stances. Sometimes, you know, he enters exchanges with his chin up in the air. And he has a lot of power. But he also has a great chin and a great durability. And even though he looks like a guy that quickly gasses, even when he's gassed per se, he still has high output and he's still able to land damage on his opponents, which makes it very impressive. And that's something that I noticed on rewatch, because I remember when I watched those fight lives, like when I rewatched the Darren Till fight, I was like, man, I remember Dricus du Plessis not having any success on the feet, pretty much winning that first round of 10-8 due to his grappling. He controlled Darren Till on the ground. And if you know Darren Till for any time now, and if you watch any of Darren Till's fights, you know that this guy doesn't have the greatest takedown defense. If anything, he has the worst takedown defense. And you know, Dricus du Plessis actually had a lot more success on the feet than I had remembered. Yes, he lost that second round because Darren Till started putting it on him. But even in that second round, like, Dricus du Plessis was able to shoot for a takedown. And that's the thing about Dricus du Plessis. He's a very complete fighter. Yes, he's very unorthodox on the feet. He's not a pretty technical fighter to look at. He looks like a guy that just learned how to fight. And really, you know, he fights in the street and has never went to a gym. Does Dricus du Plessis even hit the pads? Like, that's how he looks when he fights. But it works. It works. And Sean Strickland is like the complete opposite of that. Sean Strickland looks like all he does is hit the pads with the 1-2. Because Sean Strickland, he's very good with his fundamentals. I mean, his jab, his right hand, you know, that teep to the body, his Philly shell that we love to make fun of. It works, you know, with that Philly shell. And he's able to block body kicks. He's able to, with his hands, he parries a lot of punches, throws his jab out there. But the one thing about Sean Strickland is that he is pretty one-dimensional when it comes to his shot selection, and he doesn't have the grappling in his back pocket. Yes, he has great takedown defense, but we really never see Sean Strickland taking down any guys. He doesn't really grapple that much. I know he's a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but we don't really see that be put to use. When Sean Strickland wins is by him pressuring, by him landing his jab, and Sean Strickland is also not a guy that puts a lot of output. This is not a guy that is putting a lot of damage in his opponents. And let's talk about Sean Strickland versus Israel Adesanya, because I think that's the fight that a lot of people are going to look at when they're picking Sean Strickland to win this fight. And the reason why that fight, even though it was a great performance over Israel Adesanya, a huge upset, I did not see it coming. I think most people did not see that coming. The reason why that fight worked so well is because Sean Strickland was able to pressure Israel Adesanya. And Israel Adesanya, in all his fights, even the fights he wins, he loves to circle around the cage and wait, and he's the one counter-striking. He's the one throwing leg kicks. And that really played to Sean Strickland's fighting style, because Sean Strickland, he's a guy that likes to be on the front foot. He pressures you. He's not throwing a lot of volume, but he's kind of waiting to see what you're doing. And Sean Strickland has an amazing eye, man. This guy keeps an eye on you, and he's looking to see what you're gonna do, which works. And sometimes it could work to his advantage, and sometimes it works to his disadvantage, because sometimes I feel like Sean Strickland spends a lot of time looking at his opponents, and sometimes Sean Strickland doesn't do what he's supposed to in fights, like the Alex Pereira fight, where he decided to box and try to outstrike a kickboxing world champion. It just didn't work to his advantage, and we saw him get flatline KO'd. Then he came back, put a competitive fight against Jared Cannonier. I thought he won the fight. I thought he outlanded Jared Cannonier and some of that, but I think the optics of that fight, because it looked like Jared Cannonier had landed the more significant strikes, they gave that decision to Jared Cannonier. So there is this narrative going into this fight that Sean Strickland tends to struggle with guys that have power in their hands. And Dricus du Plessis is a very complete fighter. He does have the grappling in his back pocket. He's great with his wrestling. I feel like Dricus du Plessis in this fight is going to use his grappling more as a, if things starts to get a bit dicey on the feet, I'm going to start to grapple. I don't see Dricus du Plessis going Dagestani style and just, shooting takedowns or doing a Marab and just shooting takedowns just to shoot takedowns. But I do think he's going to mix it up. But ultimately, guys, I am going with Dricus. I am going with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight. I think he's going to be able to find a shot. And I have seen, even though Sean Strickland has amazing defense, when he is pressured, when he is on the back foot, I have seen guys land on him. I have seen him, get caught. And the thing about Dricus is that he has an amazing chin. And a lot of people that are picking against Dricus are mentioning his cardio, which is something that I'm worried about. It's definitely an unknown. But because it's an unknown, I've seen Sean Strickland get knocked out, but I've never seen Dricus du Plessis gas out in a 5-round fight. So I'm going with the thing that I've seen. I've seen Sean Strickland not do what he's supposed to, like Alex Pereira, and got knocked out. Now, I know Dricus du Plessis, in my personal opinion, I don't think he has one-shot knockout power, but I could see him hurting Sean Strickland and then landing ground and pound shots on the ground or against the fence. And I think Dricus du Plessis has so much grit, very durable. I think right now he has all the confidence in the world because he just beat Robert Whittaker. I know Sean Strickland is also coming into this fight with a lot of confidence. I mean, he just beat Israel Adesanya, but we had already seen Israel Adesanya be defeated. I mean, we saw him lose to Alex Pereira, and even his other middleweight defenses, they were competitive. I mean, that second Robert Whittaker fight, that was competitive. The Jared Cannonier fight was competitive. The second Marvin Vettori fight, in my opinion, was competitive. So we had seen Israel Adesanya. We had seen him being close competitive fights, and fights where you could be like, oh, if the guy just had done this, he could have beat Adesanya. And Sean Strickland was just that guy that was able to capitalize on that. But let's be honest, like, Sean Strickland didn't do anything special against Israel Adesanya. He just did what he just fought like Sean Strickland fights. And I mean, if Dricus du Plessis starts to be on the back foot and Sean Strickland starts to get his rhythm and his pace, and he starts to fight the way he always does and starts to put the pace on Dricus du Plessis and the one pressure in Dricus, then I think Dricus du Plessis is going to be a lot of trouble. Even though I don't think Dricus has that bad of a cardio as some people are saying, I do think that the fight gets a bit harder for him the later it goes on. You know, I don't really see Dricus winning the fourth and fifth. Maybe he's able to. Like Dricus is, even let's say if Sean Strickland is landing his punches, I know that Dricus is probably gonna be landing the harder shots, which is gonna look good on the judges. So I think Dricus can win by a knockout. Dricus can win by decision if he's able to bang those early rounds. So when I look at these two guys, and you know, it's a very hard fight to predict, guys. But when I look at these two guys, and you tell me, okay, who has more ways to win? I think Dricus has more ways to win. I think Dricus has more ways to win. I do think that Sean Strickland might give him problems, but sometimes sometimes Sean Strickland does look at his work too much. Sometimes he's just looking, and Dricus is not going to give him time to be reacting, to make his reads. He's just going to be on the front foot, pressuring Sean Strickland. And when Sean Strickland is on the back foot, that's when we get the worst version of Sean Strickland. But this is a very hard fight to predict. But I am going with Dricus du Plessis and you to win this fight, guys. When this fight first got announced, I was picking Sean Strickland because I thought, man, Dricus, you know, we haven't seen him in a fight round 5. But after watching that Robert Whittaker, I mean, I've seen that Robert Whittaker fight versus Dricus du Plessis fight probably like 12 times, guys. I've seen that fight so many times. And I was just so impressed by Dricus du Plessis' composure. Has a really nice jab, switches stances, very unorthodox, very good in the clinch, very good trips with his grappling, very good top control, nasty ground and pound shots. I mean, he was able to cut Robert Whittaker with an elbow when he had him on the ground. So Dricus du Plessis is very live everywhere. Probably his biggest weakness, I guess you can say, is a cardio, because we haven't seen him in a 5-round fight, and we have seen them gas a little bit in those 3-round fights. But even in those moments where he gasses out, like in the Brad Tavares fight or the Darren Till fight, he's able to outland and win those rounds anyway. You know what I'm saying? Like, he still has high output even in those rounds and those moments where he's gassed. So for that reason, guys, I have to go with Dricus. And I'm a fan of both these guys. I really am a fan of both these guys. Look, I'm not picking someone just because, you know, I don't know. I feel like when I watch some of these breakdowns, some other MMA YouTubers, I feel like there's a bit of bias. Like, I feel like they're picking Dricus because they're a big fan of Dricus and they don't like what Sean Strickland is saying. And some people that are picking Sean Strickland are picking Sean Strickland because they're big fans of Sean Strickland. And that's totally fair. But I don't feel like I'm getting an objective look on the fight. And I think that the way that I approach this fight is just thinking, like, man, these are two guys that I don't know, and I'm looking on their past fight. I still think that Dricus du Plessis has a very ugly fighting style, and maybe there's going to be a fighter coming up. I don't think Hamza Chimaev is going to be that guy, but maybe Israel Adesanya could find ways to beat du Plessis if we see that he's not really... I mean, that's his fighting style, so it works for him. So I don't see a reason why he would change it, but it's such an ugly fighting style that it looks like he's not technical at all, but he is technical in his own way. But he has a lot of power. He has a lot of grit, has a grappling in his back pocket, you know, pushes the pace, is going to be the one on the front foot. The one thing that I will say about Sean Strickland is that he has an amazing coach. I mean, Eric Nixon, he coached him against Israel Adesanya. And when I rewatched that fight, some of the advice that Eric Nixon was giving Sean Strickland in between those rounds of that Israel Adesanya fight was just absolutely incredible, man. He was just like, man, make sure to put the outputs, keep your defense sharp. You know what I'm saying? Like, the advice, the game plan that they used against Israel Adesanya was absolutely perfect. And Eric Nixon, guys, if you guys are not aware, he was also the guy that he's also a coach of Francis Ngannou. I mean, we saw what Francis Ngannou did to Tyson Fury in boxing. So Eric Nixon is probably the coach of he was a coach of 2023. He's an amazing coach. So that does concern me a little bit, because maybe they are going to have a great game plan against Dricus. But Dricus du Plessis also has an amazing coach. So I think this is a fantastic matchup. There's a reason why this is my most anticipated main event of 2024 right now out of the 3 main events they've announced, because I just think the fight can go in so many ways. Like, I feel like the people that pick Dricus, if Dricus wins, they're going to be like, man, you see, Dricus was going to knock him out. It was very obvious. And the people that pick Sean Strickland, if Sean Strickland ends up winning, man, you see, we all told you Dricus had terrible cardio and he's not technical at all. So I feel like whatever side you're on, you know, you're probably going to get shit on if that guy ends up losing. And I know that if Dricus ends up losing, you know, people are going to be like, oh, Sean Strickland, he was obviously going to win. You know, you should have paid more attention, blah, blah, you're MMA casual. and that's how it's gonna work. But guys, I have to go with my gut feeling, and my gut tells me that Dricus du Plessis is gonna be able to find the finish, and I think he has more ways to win this fight. I still think it's a very competitive fight. I still think that Strickland is very live and could definitely start to outstrike, and definitely the more technical guy on the feet. But when it comes to even the tools on the feet, like, Dricus throws body kicks, throws head kicks, throws heavy hooks. He targets the body. Strickland is not like that. Like, Strickland is very like, jab, jab, parry, the right hand, maybe a left hook. But his tools, when it comes to his tools on the feet are very one dimensional when it comes to Sean Strickland. Yes, the tools that he has, he uses them pretty well. He's great with the fundamentals, but his shot selection isn't there. And I feel like he doesn't have enough tools, in my opinion, to really put Dricus du Plessis down or to knock him out. I mean, the only way that du Plessis gets knocked out, in my opinion, is if du Plessis is gassed. That's the only way I see it happening. But anyways, guys, I'm going with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight. Let me know who you think is going to end up winning this fight. I'm about to provide my picks for the rest of the card, guys. I hope you guys enjoy the fights on Saturday. Let me know what you guys think. Are you guys going with Dricus du Plessis to win this fight and new, or are you going with Sean Strickland to end up to keep the title, to retain the title, and to maybe have a legacy in the middleweight division? Who knows, guys? But these are the list of the rest of the picks for this card, guys. Let me know your picks for the rest of the card as well. I didn't want to do a 30 to 40 minute video discussing the rest of the card, especially when I think the card is absolutely trash besides the main event and besides that Allen versus Evloev fight. But anyway, guys, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one.